Hello and welcome back once again to movie reviews. So today I went and saw another Rifftrax. This is the last Rifftrax of the year, other than the encore presentation, which will be in like 2 weeks. This time we did Rifftrax, Santa Claus, and the Ice Cream Bunny, which I think I quoted before saying Santa Claus versus the Ice Cream Bunny, but that's not the title. It's Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny, so my correction there. Okay, so this one was rough. It was still funny. They still made me laugh, but I don't know where you guys find these movies, but some of these, like, here's the thing when I used to watch Mystery Science Theater 3000, is I would start out watching this movie, and you got these three characters in the front of the film making jokes about it, and, you know, it kind of gets you through the movie, and then as you're watching the movie, one thing that used to irritate me is I would actually start to get into the movie, and then I'm trying to listen to the dialogue of the movie, and they kept talking over it. So I originally hated Mystery Science Theater 3000 when I was like a real young kid. I liked the host segments when you had the robots, and they were doing little skits and stuff. But anytime I was in the theater, I was like, oh, why won't they just shut up so I can watch this movie? And as I got older, I started to realize that they actually needed to be there in the early progression of the movie, because some movies start out really slow, and, you know, if you were just watching them on a regular basis, you might be like, you know, I just can't get into this movie, but then had you given it like another 5 minutes, you could have easily gotten into it. Like, when you look at films like let's say This Island Earth or whatever, I mean, it's a bad movie, but it's also a movie of its time, where if you actually if you switch everything off in your head and you're like, look, I know this movie's going to suck because it's from like 1940, and it's completely different from what we have today, and you switch all that off and you just sit down and actually watch the movie, and you can ignore a lot of that, it's actually not that bad of a movie. I mean, it has a story, it has a plot, things play out, it hits all the little tropes that it should. It's just something we can look back at now and laugh about how bad it looks compared to nowadays. And yeah, I'm sure it might have been a bad movie back then as well. I don't know. I didn't live back then. But a lot of the movies they used to have on MST3K were like that for me. Like, I would watch them and I'd be like, this movie's not that good, but at least they're making a couple jokes. And then I would actually start to get into the movie like midway through, and they would be talking over it, and it would annoy me because I was like, wait, I just missed what he said. That was probably important to what was going on because you guys talked over it. Then as I got older, I just didn't care anymore. I watched it just to hear the jokes because I wanted to laugh, because it was a comedy. That's what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to be watching the movie, you're supposed to be laughing at the jokes. Now, since they've gotten into Rifftrax, the movies, a lot of them, I'm sure, are still the same way where, you know, yeah, it's an older movie, it might be bad by modern standards, but if you actually get into it and watch it on its own, it might not be that bad of a movie. But a few of the ones that I've seen, like, for instance, this one, I don't even know if you can classify Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny as a movie. I mean, it's a movie in the sense that it was filmed, but I mean, this is filmed. Is this a movie of me sitting here talking to you? No. So yeah, like, some of these are really, really rough to sit through, and yeah, their comedy makes it a little bit more enjoyable, but at times they just like go into these points where there's just nothing going on in the movie, so they don't have anything to say, they don't have any jokes that they can make, and it's just, you're sitting here watching this movie without them talking for extended periods of time. And okay, so let's get into the breakdown of what happened. So we go into the theater, as usual, and we had 3 shorts this time, which 3 might be a bit much. I mean, they usually do 1, 2 I could see, 3, obviously you're padding out the time of this thing, because you're scheduled for 2 hours, you only have like a hour-long movie at most, so you gotta pad it out for an extra hour. So our first short was the Santa Clauses, as in plural, Klaus, I don't know, story. in which it sort of plays off of, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus, but barely, in the fact that the girl's name was Virginia, and she's, okay, they hear a noise, they wake up, this little boy and little girl, brother and sister, they wake up, they go downstairs, it's Santa Claus, and the brother, looking right at Santa Claus, goes, Santa Claus isn't real. And Santa's like, well, come here, let me tell you a story. Of course I'm real. I'll explain to you how you can know I'm real. So they go and sit on his lap, and even the guys in Rifftrax make a joke about, yes, approach the stranger with no caution, or the intruder, home intruder, or something, whatever they said. And which makes you laugh, because it's like, yeah, that's obviously a funny point. So then he's basically telling this story about, well, the easiest way to know that there's really a Santa Claus is to look at monkeys. You're like, what? Even the boy's like, what the hell are you talking about, Santa? So he's like, monkeys aren't all that different from humans, and they have a Santa Claus as well. And he goes into this whole long story about monkeys who like to eat pretzels, who then learn to use tools so they can build houses so that Santa Monkey can deliver them pretzels. And, which wouldn't be bad if it was just something silly like that, but this thing literally goes on for almost 30 minutes. This isn't a short. This is a freaking Saturday morning cartoon. I mean, like, seriously, by the time this thing was midway through, I looked at my clock on my phone, and I was like, God, it's already been a half hour of this thing, and maybe it just seemed longer. I mean, I looked at my clock, but I could have just been misthinking the time, because they did talk for a few minutes prior to getting into it, so it was probably a good 15-minute segment at least. But yeah, so if you watch one of my videos, that's as long as this guy went on talking about monkeys and how they relate to Santa Claus. And then he's like, so yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. And it's like, no, you didn't tell her anything that related to there being a Santa Claus. What the hell are you talking about? Anyway, so that was our first short, which went on way too long. That one probably could have been just dropped off. And then we went into the second short, which was probably my favorite short of the evening, which was the story of Custard the Dragon. So, there's a little girl who lives in a White House, and she has 4 pets. A cat, a mouse, I think a dog, and a dragon, because, people have dragons. The dragon, however, is a coward. And, he's afraid of everything. Although they say it in the story, but they don't, or in the narrative, but they don't really show it in the film. So then they're like, they bought him a present for Christmas, which is a cage, because he wants to be inside of a cage where he'll feel safe, because nothing can get to him if he's inside of a cage. Well, then a burglar breaks in and tries to steal all the presents. And right when he's about to grab the cage, Custer flips his fucking shit and just eats the guy. And then everyone gets up the next morning and is like, good job, Custard, you're not scared anymore. And then everyone goes to sleep, and then Custard wakes up again and opens up his present early, sees the cage, crawls inside, closes the door, and goes to sleep. So obviously he's still scared, even though he just ate this guy who was trying to steal his cage. I don't know, that was probably my favorite segment of the whole thing. And again, it's not because of the jokes necessarily that they were making, as much as it's one of those things where you're watching it and you're like, this is so stupid, but yet I'm into it. If that makes sense. It might have just been like the poem that they were reading as the narrative. Not the Rifftrax guys, but the narrative of the actual thing was a poem. It could just be that I got into that aspect of it. So their jokes did help, yes, but that was an enjoyable short. Just like, what was the last one? Measuring Man? That was an enjoyable short. It was stupid short. It's about, let's teach this kid how to do measurements in the most obscene ways possible. But it was funny just watching it even without the commentary. You could watch it and laugh and like, oh my God, what is this? Where that monkey Santa thing, God. Give me Custard the Dragon or that frickin' monkey Santa any day. So then we get into our third short, which I actually had to think about what the hell the third short was, because it blended so much in with the movie I couldn't remember at first. I've been like racking my brain all morning before recording this. I'm like, what the hell was the third short? What was the third short? What was the third short? I'm trying to like look it up online, like what were the 3 shorts that accompanied Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny on Rifftrax, and it's like I'm not finding anything. And then it finally came back to me. So our third short, I don't remember the exact title for, but it was like Santa's Magical Wonderland or something like that. And basically it's a short from the same guys that did Santa Claus. Was it just Santa Claus? One of the other riff tracks they did where Santa Claus lives in the sky with Merlin and all that. This is basically a short that takes place in Santa's workshops. And, Merlin's there, Puss in Boots is there, all those guys. I was going to say Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, but I've seen that, and I don't think that was the right one. I think it was just the one that's called Santa Claus. But yeah, this is a short based on that, and they go into, like, how it was created and all that, so I'm not going to go into that too much. And basically, it's all the elves are in Santa's workshop, and they're supposed to be making the toys. And there's this skunk named Stinky who's supposed to be doing something and helping out, and he takes off. And then there's a wolf who, as he walks, he makes accordion sounds. Like, I can't do it, but if you ever seen Looney Tunes, like when the coyote gets squished by the boulder and then he gets up and he's doing the accordion walk. Yeah, that background noise, that plays constantly throughout this. So the wolf gets mad and he goes to Santa and he's like, Santa, I got a grievance, and this guy, I do all the work he's supposed to be doing, and he's out doing whatever, and Santa just laughs in this guy's face like it's the most hysterical thing he's ever heard. So then the wolf gets mad and he goes out, he goes, I'm going to find him and I'm going to, take care of him. He eventually finds him in this puppet show, which is probably the weirdest puppet show ever. But, like, the puppet show keeps flashing on, but then, like, you keep flashing back to the audience, and each time the kids that are sitting around the skunk slowly start to move away, like they just let him have the whole front row to himself and move to the back, which really didn't make any sense, because there was, like, one kid up front that kept, like, patting him, like, are you real? Then, eventually the wolf finds him, tells him to get back to work, and then all the elves and kids and everything all disappear, and they go back to making toys. Then the wolf just sits down and watches the puppet show. Santa comes into the office, and he's like, like he's going to look into what the wolf was saying finally. He walks in, he sees all the elves and the skunk work, and he just laughs, and then he goes and opens up the door to the puppet show, and there's the wolf sitting there slacking off. And you figure, oh, maybe Santa will go and be like, hey, you told me you had these grievances, and here you are, messing around. But no, Santa just stands there and starts laughing at the wolf watching the puppet show, and that was the end. So, again, not as bad as the Christmas monkey thing, but at the same time it was bad. But this is where the Rifftrax comedy comes in, because they were constantly making jokes about things that just had me laughing nonstop. The monkey thing, they made a few jokes here and there, but nothing that really made that seem long, honestly. The next two seem to go by pretty quickly. So, now here we are 15 minutes in this review, and I'm finally going to tell you about this damn ice cream bunny. But not yet, because first I got to tell you how Santa plays into the ice cream bunny. So Santa, he's flying around with the reindeer, I guess going to deliver presents, and his sleigh gets stuck on the beach in Florida. I believe it was Florida. So the sleigh's stuck in the sand, the reindeer are trying to pull him out, they can't get him out, they detach and take off back to the North Pole because it's too hot in Florida for them. Meanwhile, Santa's sitting here in his sleigh, still wrapped up in all his, heavy winter jacket and everything, pouring sweat. And he's like, oh, it's so hot, it's so hot. So he magically calls all these kids to help him. There's like 20, 30-something kids. Weird thing is, only half of the kids that ended up arriving were the ones that he called, and then there's like all these other random kids that he didn't call, but then like some of the other kids that he did call aren't there. So it's like, oh, we'll film you guys for this part. Oh, you guys aren't here anymore. Hey, you 6 kids, you want to come over here and be in our movie? So all these kids show up on the beach, and Santa's like, I need help getting out, and he's like, takes so goddamn long to explain what's going on to the children. They're all just sitting there on the beach like they're listening to a story, and he's like, hey, I need help. So they all leave, and each one comes back individually. with a different animal to try to help pull Santa's sleigh out. Like, the first one's a guy in a monkey suit. So where this little, like, 4-year-old girl supposedly found a gorilla, who knows? But it's kind of explained why it had to be a guy in a monkey suit and not an actual gorilla, just for safety purposes, because every other animal in this is a legit animal, other than the gorilla. So obviously, had they brought an actual gorilla on set, he probably would have killed all the children or went nuts or something. So during the gorilla scene, Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn show up out of nowhere. They're just, like, rafting down the river. Like, hey, what's going on over there? And they, like, come up onto the beach. And one of them has a raccoon who's, like, flipping his shit because he's on this lake. And, like, the raft starts to tip. And he's, like, flipping out. He's, like, going to scratch at one of the characters' faces, like, legitimately. So he's like, no. He's, like, trying to get him. And he, like, runs around the back of his head. And he finally gets a hold of him and calms him down, and then as soon as they get on land, the damn thing just takes off. It's like, nah, I'm done with this water shit. So Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn are just sitting there in the bushes just watching all these kids try and help Santa out. They don't help Santa themselves. They just sit there and watch. And, like, at one point you forget they're there, but then they show back up at the end, like it cuts back over the bushes, and it's like, yep, we're still here. It's okay. So the gorilla can't pull Santa out. So then, like, the next girl brings, like, a goat or something, and he can't pull Santa out. The next one brings in, like, a pig, can't pull Santa out. The next one brings in a cow, that can't pull Santa. The next one brings in a horse, that can't pull Santa. Next one brings in a sheep, that can't pull Santa. And, like, each time they got these live animals that they're trying to get to where they could, like, hitch the sleigh to them. So they, like, walk them over on a leash. None of them want to cooperate. And they walk them, and then when they walk them into the sleigh, they're facing to where they would be facing the front of the sleigh. Like, if I'm sitting in the sleigh, they would be facing me. And so Santa's like, no, you got to turn them around. Take them back out and back them in. And, like, a couple times you can tell they didn't ever call cut on this movie, because at a certain point Santa's like, well, here, let me get out and see if I can help you. Otherwise, he just sits in the sleigh the whole time. So, like, he gets out and he's trying to help this girl back up this sheep, and then, like, turn it around and back it in properly. And same thing with the horse. They can't get the horse to cooperate. But yeah, Santa's basically like a lazy ass in this whole thing. He's like, oh, I'm just going to sit here and sweat to death because it's so hot. And then finally at one point he's like, I can't take it anymore. And he starts taking off his clothes. And he's like, it's just so hot. Like, another point he's like, I can't wait for these kids. I got to do something myself. So he gets out and, like, brushes a little bit of the sand off of the sleigh track. Or the ski, whatever you want to call it. And then he's like, oh, it's just too hot to do this. And he gets back in and sits down. And it's like, really? You barely did anything. So then the kids try everything they can possibly think of, and they just can't help Santa. So they all come back to the beach and, like, we tried. He's like, well, you can't give up, kids, so let me tell you the story about Jack and the Beanstalk. And, like, this whole Santa Claus segment, I'm like, oh my God, come on. Is this going to be the entire next hour of this movie? And it was a good probably 30 minutes or so of just this segment. And then he gets into telling us about Jack and the Beanstalk. And I guess a previous version they had done of this, the middle part was the story of Thumbelina. But this one is the Jack and the Beanstalk one. So then we cut into Jack and the Beanstalk. And now we can actually hear the audio, because another thing about the Santa Claus portion is you could barely hear anything they were saying. They were, like, constantly mumbling over each other. It just had really bad audio to begin with. It's a piece of crap low-budget film from the 70s. What do you expect? So then we go into Jack and the Beanstalk, and the audio, like, skyrockets. It scared the crap out of me when Jack started singing. I was like, whoa, turn it down a little bit, So it basically tells the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, but it is the most slowly paced story of Jack and the Beanstalk ever. Anybody who crapped on Jack the Giant Slayer, go watch this version of Jack and the Beanstalk, and you'll appreciate Jack the Giant Slayer. But it basically tells the story. Jack's singing, and he's like, we used to have this hen that laid golden eggs, and we used to have this harp, and then my dad died, and then someone broke in and stole all our stuff while we were sleeping, and now we're poor, and we've been selling everything we own, and all we have left is this cow. So it does the point where, he's supposed to take the cow to market to sell it, and we meet Honest John, a used cow seller, who buys Jack's cow for the magic beans, and then turns around and sells it for like $20. And Jack's like, well, how do I know they're magic? And he's like, well, if they don't work, bring them back and I'll give you the money we agreed on for the cow, which was like $1. And then he turned around and sold it for 20. So Jack goes home and he tells his mom, Honest John said that if the beans didn't work, that he'd give us the money. She goes, well, go ahead and take them and go back and get the money. And he sends Jack's sister with him to make sure that he gets the money. And they go there, Honest John's gone. So they come back, and the mom throws the beans out the window, and the beanstalk instantly grows. It's not the overnight thing like traditionally in the story. And Jack's like, hey, I'm going to go up there and see what's up there. And they just let him go. Like, his mom and his sister are just like, oh, be careful. And then we have the long segment of him climbing the beanstalk. Because you got to watch him climb up until he's out of the frame of the window. Then it cuts to another scene where he's just against a bluish-white background, and you see him climb. Then he stops for a second to rest, and then he climbs. Nothing's going on in the movie during this point, except you have to sit here and wait for him to get off the frame. Then he gets up to the clouds, and you see the castle, and he sings another song. Then we go inside to the giant and his wife. And, of course, the giant has to sing the Fee-Fi-Fo-Fum song, which takes about 5 minutes. Then Jack comes in, he gets his golden hen, climbs back down, and the mom's like, okay, we got the golden hen, that's something, at least we're not dirt poor anymore. And then it jumps around a little bit, which was a little weird, because it goes back to, like, Honest John selling magic beans and stuff. And then it cuts back to Jack, and he's like, well, I don't see why I can't go up again, even though Mom told me not to. When did she tell you that? So he's like, well, I'm going to go. And he's like, well, it seems kind of stupid to go back up there and risk my life just to get my dad's heart back. But you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. So he writes a note that he's leaving. And then his sister and her random new boyfriend walk in. She's like, oh, no, where's Jack? And then her boyfriend's like, oh, don't worry, he'll be all right. It's like, who are you? Even the Rifftrax guy said, who is this? It's kind of like to be introducing a new character now. So then again, we watch Jack climb all the way up this beanstalk. He gets inside, the giant sings his Fee-Fi-Fo-Fum song, and then Jack kind of like goes back out, but you don't really see where he goes. And then you come back in, and then we see the giant again sing the Fee-Fi-Fo-Fum song for a third time. Then he goes to sleep, then Jack gets the magic harp finally. Why they did a double take on this section, I don't know. He didn't steal anything else in that time. It's just like, oh, that thing we just did? Let's not use that take. Let's use this other take. And they just had like a second take of the exact same segment in the movie. He gets the golden harp. He goes back down. The giant follows him. He chops it down. The giant falls. Then everyone comes in, including Honest John, and everyone's happy and friendly because they got this magic harp back now. Then we go back to Santa Claus on the beach. And all the kids are like, yeah, thanks for the story, Santa. And they all run off. And he's like, oh, where are you going? I'm still stuck here. Okay, so Santa's still stuck there. So then you start to hear a siren. And you, like, what is this? Now you see, it's like an old Model T looking, I think it's supposed to be a fire truck. And it's like bouncing down this road. And this thing is so horrible. Like, they barely touch this rock, and the whole car kind of like jumps sideways across the screen. And like all the kids are like grabbing on for their lives because they're all riding on the back of this thing. And it's like, oh my god, someone is going to die making this movie. But then you see the thing driving the damn fire truck, which is the star of the show, the Ice Cream Bunny, who shows up in the last 10 minutes of this movie. Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny shows up at the last 10 minutes. So then the Ice Cream Bunny and the kids arrive, and Santa's like, oh, it's my good friend the Ice Cream Bunny. Of course you would come to rescue me. So all the kids get off the truck, and Santa Claus gets on the truck with the Ice Cream Bunny, and the Ice Cream Bunny is going to drive him around to finish delivering all the presents. So all the kids are left on this beach like, oh, okay, bye, Santa and Ice Cream Bunny. What the hell are we supposed to do now? We're just stuck here on the beach. Then they all go back over and they sit back down at the sleigh like they're still listening to Santa Claus telling the story, looking up at the sleigh. Like, yeah, that's a great story, Santa. Now tell us the one about Thumbelina. And then, like, but he's not there. So what the hell are they all sitting around looking at the sleigh for? Then the sleigh just magically vanishes. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's magic. It just went back to the North Pole. Well, why couldn't it do that before when Santa's stuck here? So then all the kids get up and they leave. And then we cut back over to Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn, who are still sitting there in the bushes looking at her, and hey, we're still here. And that's the end of the movie. That was the end of the Rifftrax. That last 10 minutes, although probably the best part of the entire film, was the roughest to get through. Because, like, at that point, I'm like, come on. Because at this point, I'm, like, checking my phone every couple minutes. I had my jacket, like, draped across me, and I would, like, peek into my collar and hit my phone to see what time it was. And I'm like, okay, there's less than 10 minutes left of this. Can we just get it over? Then the ice cream bunny shows up, and I start laughing hysterically during this entire last 10 minutes. But the whole time, I'm, like, fighting to keep my eyes open because I was so tired. I just wanted to go to sleep in that last 10 minutes. But I'm like, no, this is where everything's happening because I'm laughing at everything they're saying. I need to be able to see the visual with what I'm hearing to really enjoy it. So I'm, like, forcing myself to keep my eyes open just so I can finish watching this movie. And it actually wrapped up a little bit sooner than I thought it would. I thought we had 10 minutes, ended up being like 6 minutes left. So it wrapped up early. Everyone got up and left. Yeah, so overall, this one was kind of rough, but it was fun, but rough. I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more if I hadn't saw it in the theater, honestly, because there was this group of like 10 guys sitting in front of me, and apparently they go and see all these together, and they think they're, it's one of those groups where they think that they can riff just because they watch Rifftrax, and not everyone has the talent to do Rifftrax, sorry. Yeah, like, they're all trying to make their own jokes during the movie, and, like, a lot of times they're stepping on the other lines, and it's like, well, you guys just shut up and watch the movie. And then, like, on their way out, they're just, like, talking about what their favorite parts were, and, like, still trying to make jokes about stuff that happened. It's like, you're not funny, just shut up. Just move and get out of my way so I can leave and go home. And, yeah, so that's it for Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny. Wow, that's probably the longest review I've done in a long time. So, as far as the star rating on this one, again, I'm going to have to rate the movie and the riff separately. So, for the movie, Jesus, like negative 10 stars? Can I do that? Okay, honestly, the Jack and the Beanstalk part wasn't that bad. Had they just been like, oh, we're going to riff Jack and the Beanstalk, and it was only that segment, I could have enjoyed it more. But that first Santa Claus bit, well, first of all, the Santa Claus and the Monkeys short was unnecessary. The Custer the Dragon one would have been more than enough. You got the second one with the Santa Claus and the wolf with the accordion wolf, whatever you want to call him. Unnecessary, but it fit into the story. They could have done just the two shorts. Shaved that first 15-minute one about monkeys off, because honestly, I was so bored watching that. Then as far as the movie itself, that first segment of Santa took so damn long before it finally got to Jack and the Beanstalk. I was literally like, this is probably the worst Rifftrax I've ever seen. And it's not for lack of the Rifftrax guys. It's that they're finding stuff that just isn't funny. It's not fun to watch. Like, some stuff is, like I said earlier, fun to watch because of how bad it is. This is something that's just so bad it's not even fun to watch, even when you're making jokes about it. So as far as the movie itself, it gets a little bit of redeeming from the Jack and the Beanstalk portion, because that wasn't that bad if that had been the whole movie. But like I said, they did that second take of the second time he goes up, which didn't make any sense. And then we're back to Santa Claus. And the movie's called Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny, and the Ice Cream Bunny doesn't show up until the very end. He's there for like 2 minutes. The movie itself, I'm going to give a 1. As far as the riffing, like I said, the last 10 minutes I was laughing my ass off, so that gets some there, but like I said, in certain parts they just had nothing to say because there was nothing really going on in the movie, so how do you make a joke when there's nothing going on? So there were times, like normally during these, it'll have like the full screen of the movie, and then occasionally it'll cut to a slightly smaller screen, and then it'll have the 3 guys over here so you can kind of watch what they were saying. It only did that like once in this entire 2 hours. Normally it does it like every 10 minutes on all the other ones I've seen. This one, it only cut over to them like one time, and pretty much during that entire time, they were sitting there just watching their monitors, waiting for the next cue to come up for their next joke, and they just had nothing to say. It's like they didn't even try and ad-lib anything to kind of fill the time. They just kind of stood there blankly looking at their monitors, waiting for the next cue. So I'm sure that they had just as much trouble riffing this one, plus they're probably using the jokes they wrote for the last time they riffed it instead of anything really super new. But like I said, when they were on, they were on. When they were off, they were off. That's not really their fault as much as it's the movie's fault. So as far as the riff itself, this is probably one of their weaker ones. I'll say that. Compared to any of the other Rifftrax I've seen, any of the MST3K stuff, this is probably one of their weaker ones. So I'm going to give the riffing on this one probably a 3. Like I said, it's kind of weak, but it's still funny, so it's kind of middle of the road. So I'll give this one a 3. Yeah, like I said, not really their fault, but I've seen better from you guys. But the last 10 minutes is hilarious. If you just want to like find that online or something, watch it. But it would be out of context, so it might not be as hilarious as I think it is. Yeah, so that's it for Rifftrax for the rest of 2015. They are doing a couple in January of 2016, but they're ones that they've already done. They're just bringing them back. They're doing a couple encores for people that missed them the last time. One of which, I think the first one is Starship Troopers, which I fucking love Starship Troopers. I know it's not the best movie, but it makes me laugh every time I watch it. I just have fun watching Starship Troopers, so to hear them riff on it is going to be even better. Then they are doing an encore presentation of The Room towards the end of January, which they just did earlier this year, but I didn't know it was out, so I ended up missing that one. So I'll probably see the encore of that if I don't forget. So I am looking forward to that. Because I've yet to see The Room all the way through. Like, I've seen parts of it, but I've never seen the whole movie actually all the way through. So, of course, the first time I'm going to get to see it all the way through will be with them riffing over it. But honestly, I think that, from what I've seen of the movie, that's probably the best way to watch it. So, yeah, that's what's going to be coming up as far as Rifftrax in January. And I've been talking for over a half hour about this movie, of this riff, I should say. So I think we'll wrap this up here. I was going to go try and see another movie, but it starts in like 20 minutes, so I'm not sure if I'm going to have enough time to make it over to across town to the theater before it starts. I might try. I might be able to make it there. If not, then probably go see something tomorrow or later this evening. So yeah, that is it for this episode. Again, thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, rate, favorite, whatever you can do, share. Yeah, and until next time, we'll see you at the movies.